We had an issue last time when we started again. It distorted the camera very strangely. So hope it doesn't do that again. Let me
As
check
long as
that.
it makes me thinner.
No, it didn't. It made me look like it. No, it's going well. It's going well. Okay, so we're ready to go. Good morning, Australia. Thanks for joining us. It's very generous of you to dedicate a little bit of your time to sharing with us and the rest of the world, hopefully, the great work you're doing there. I know Matt and Angela personally. It's always a great pleasure, and we've had many interesting discussions. So I'm really looking forward to the segment, and it's all yours now. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Look, thanks so much, Gabrielle, and colleagues. Welcome from Australia. I'd like to acknowledge the lands on which we meet and pay my respects to the Indigenous peoples of Australia and respect to Aboriginal elders past and present and emerging. I'm coming from Darubbin land, which is about an hour north of Sydney, and I've got quite a few of our National Principal Association heads from across Australia, and we've got the Australian Primary Principals Association, we've got the Australian Secondary Principals Association, we've got the Australian Government Primary Principals Association, the Australian Heads of Independent Schools Australia, the Catholic Secondary Principals Australia, ASEPA, the Special Education, and then also we've got our Commonwealth Deputy Secretary of Education for Australia, Meg Brighton, joining us as well. And so I'd like to get my colleagues, when they do speak, to introduce themselves. And we've got a little bit of a running sheet for us. And the wonderful Angela Falkenberg from APA will be leading us off.
Yeah, hello, I'm Angela Falkenberg, President of APA, and I'm speaking to you today from Adelaide, South Australia, which is Ghana land. At the heart of the Australian Primary Principals Association is the simple truth that when primary leaders are trusted, supported, and genuinely heard, children, staff, and communities thrive. Every day across Australia, principals are proving this through their leadership, their courage, and their unwavering commitment to children. So in 2026, APA will amplify this truth through a national campaign called Start Well, Learn Well. This campaign brings into focus how primary schools contribute in ways to every community. They create belonging, shape identity, and hold families through both ordinary days and extraordinary times. They nurture curiosity, connection, and confidence, the foundation on which all future learning stands. But so much of this impact across every area of our nation is driven by generosity and goodwill. Goodwill from principals who arrive early, stay late, go the extra mile, as do support staff and teachers with kindness, conversation, and resources. And goodwill from communities that partner with their schools because they understand that strong schools build strong futures. APA's role is to surface this goodwill, recognise it and celebrate it, and advocate for the conditions that will allow it to flourish and not be exploited. Schools are increasingly asked to host and even deliver non-education services. And we ask, just because we are here, should we be here for everything? To government, principals are stepping forward with a unified message. Those closest to the work must help shape the policies and strategies that influence it. Consultation alone is not enough. Meaningful reform requires genuine involvement. APA reinforces this at every table because how we define the problem determines the quality and effectiveness of solutions. A central part of APA's work is advocating for principal wellbeing. The role has never been more complex, more public, or more demanding. Yet leaders continue to hold their communities with calm judgment and compassion. APA is pushing for workload, trust, role clarity, and system coherence to be treated as essentials, not as essentials, not options. Our research this year into the impact on leaders' productivity following threats or incidents of actual violence is world first and will soon be published. And no surprise, when we are treated poorly or badly, our effectiveness is reduced and teaching and learning suffers. And as we look to the future, we believe we must keep humanity at the core of every conversation about learning. OECD's work on education for human flourishing reminds us that young people need more than knowledge. They need the capabilities, that will help them find meaning, purpose, and direction. They need to become adaptive problem solvers, ethically grounded, able to act with understanding and courage in a changing world. In the age of AI, this becomes even more important. Technology is often presented as the future of learning, but it's not about replacing humans. It's about enhancing human potential. AIs, because I noted the former conversation, plural, data and learning, or data and digital tools matter only when paired with empathy, connection, and human judgment. But I do imagine classrooms where technology frees teachers to focus on relationships, creativity, and mentoring. That for me is the future, a powerful blend of intelligent tools and human care. For we humans are hardwired for connection, and every child deserves the skills to build and sustain respectful relationships throughout life. Today, on World Children's Day, we are reminded that our children deserve more than the repeated call of back to basics. Our children deserve more than a basic education. They deserve everything good and fun and marvellous. We all do better when inclusion, belonging, and engagement are prioritised. National policy must honour childhood, it must support wellbeing, and it must position primary education as a vital national investment, not as a stepping stone, but a cornerstone. So APA is lifting the collective voice of principals, advocating for smarter, more human systems, making visible the goodwill and impact woven through primary schools, championing students' rights, and through Start Well, Learn Well, reminding Australia that primary schools don't just educate children, they strengthen the nation. Transformation doesn't, though, come from the top alone. It happens when the profession, us, stands together, speaks together, and learns together. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Angela. It's really interesting looking at all the initiatives that each of our associations do. I know when we get together. I will move straight on to Andy Myson because I know he's right in the middle of an event and he's making time to pop in and then pop out. So Andy from the Australian Secondary Principals Association, thanks so much for your time. All yours.
Thanks, Matt. And I hope you can hear me. I apologise if there's some background noise. It's a busy event I'm at today. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's really great to be part of this global conversation. My name's Andy Myson. I'm here on behalf of the Australian Secondary Principals Association, which represents public high school leaders all across our country. We all know the world is changing fast and education needs to keep up. The traditional modes of schooling aren't enough to prepare students for the complexity and unpredictability they'll face after they leave us. So today I'd like to share some of the practical ways our schools, principals and teachers are actively leading that change. We're really focused on making education more relevant and empowering for every single student. A key area of change is moving away from rigid one-size-fits-all traditional teaching. We're embracing more flexible learning models that are built around students' individual interests and passions and capabilities. There's a growing use of frameworks across Australia like Big Picture Education, which connects learning directly to student passion and real-world projects. This approach allows us to place just as much importance on skills like critical thinking and collaboration as we do on content knowledge. It also helps us better integrate vocational training with academic pathways, creating clearer and more valued options for all students. This also means looking at new technologies, of course, and what would such a presentation be without mention of AI? And indeed, our educators are exploring how to use AI, embracing AI, in fact, to support learning, not to replace teachers, but to help personalise instruction and reduce administrative workload. Another core focus is building student agency, particularly in secondary school. Students need to be empowered to not just navigate their future, but actively shape it and to contribute in their communities and society more broadly. A fantastic concrete example of this is the Entrepreneurial Skills Project, which is a national initiative ASPA is running with our partner, the Young Change Agents. As the project details show, you can have a look on our website, it's not about making every student an entrepreneur. It's about fostering an entrepreneurial mindset. The goal is a school culture where students gain the confidence and skills to solve real problems. And through this project, schools are setting up youth councils and connecting with local partners so students can work on authentic challenges. It's a very practical way to strengthen civics education and build a generation of capable and engaged citizens. And we all know that we're going to need all of their skills and capabilities to respond to the challenges that the global community faces. If we're changing what we value in education, we also have to change how we measure success. A single test score simply can't capture a student's full range of abilities. That's why ASPA is also a partner in the Next Generation Learning Project alongside the University of Melbourne's Melbourne Metrics group. As we highlight on our website, this initiative is about rethinking what success looks like and also how we recognise it. It helps schools implement new assessment practices that look beyond grades to celebrate a whole diversity of student capability, things like leadership, teamwork, and ethical thinking. It's about seeing and valuing the whole student. So to sum up, schools across Australia are actively and positively taking the lead. And as Angela said previously, schools, you can't implement policy without school leaders being front and centre in the design of those policies. And so ASPA is trying to provide opportunities to support school leaders to lead their communities with confidence. And so we're moving to more flexible learning, focus on student agency, using new ways to measure a wider range of skills and connecting academic and vocational learning in more creative ways. As the Association for Secondary Principals, the ASPA's role is to support school leaders who are driving these efforts on the ground. We help by providing the networks, professional learning and practical tools to turn these goals into reality. Ultimately, our collective goal is to build an education system that prepares students not for the world we knew, but for the complex and exciting world that they will one day lead. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks heaps, Andy. And my previous school up in Newcastle was one of the new metrics schools because we were looking at that Melbourne Metrics framework and how it really actually works well with students with disability, because it's talking about what the students can do rather than a deficit model. It's really looking at, well, what can they do as citizens? You know, how can they have agency? And in the disability space, that's really an interesting sort of lens to be able to look at learning through and developing a profile of what the child can do for their next environment. And I know you're busy and you've got to go, Andy, so thanks so much for your time. Now, our next person in line was supposedly going to be Pat Murphy. Now, I'm also wondering whether Gabrielle has dropped out or not. So let's quickly see. Bear with me. Gabrielle, are you there? Okie dokie. Well, I can't see Pat and I can't see Gabrielle, so hopefully we're still live, everyone. And I will just pass over to Chris, Dr. Chris Duncan from AHISA for his contribution to our segment. Thanks for your time, Chris.
Yeah, thanks very much, Matt, and thank you to Gabrielle as well. And look, I thank you for the opportunity to take part in this initiative. I come to you from Canberra, the nation's capital, which sits on Ngunnawal land, and it's important bearing for this discussion and its origins. Look, I'd just like to mention AHISA. Australia has a fairly large non-government school sector, and our organisation represents the principals of those independent schools. And as I said, we educate approximately a third of Australian students. I just want to refer to a couple of initiatives we've been involved in. AHISA has been working with the University of Sydney and their educational neuroscience project, and it's an area that we're very interested in. A year, just almost 12 months ago, with Associate Professor Ming Kang King, and Dr. Derek Sankey and myself, we published what we believe is the first comprehensive educational, philosophical, and neuroscientific critique of cognitive load theory. Cognitive load theory is very much an Australian creation, and it's been gaining extraordinary sort of popularity and currency in the last few years, particularly here in Australia, and I think it's happening in the UK as well. It appears to be some sort of solution to why we have this current level of underachievement in Australian schools and indeed elsewhere. That's an important contribution for that. And look, we've also been working with those, been associated with those two scholars, and they have just published what's called a rapid literature review for the Association of Independent Schools in New South Wales, and that's called Maximising Learning and Teaching, Moving Ahead with Educational Neuroscience. This is a very important initiative because it goes very much against the grain and the current, I suppose, enthusiasm and popularity of cognitive load theory, which we believe is old theory. It has a very computational information processing view of the mind, and we're very much more interested in the idea of emotion and feeling as the underpinnings of learning, and how learn's so important in schools that without the ambience of care and trust, not a lot of learning is going to occur. So that's very much where we're coming from. This rapid literature review brings together what we think is a really clear definition of what we call evidence-based teaching. We have the mantra around the world at the moment about evidence-based learning, but this tries to define evidence-based teaching, and it's positioned at the interface of scientific research evidence, a teacher's pedagogical expertise, and the values of the school. And that's really critical. And that's in stark contrast to how the word evidence has been bandied around in education, and the marginalisation of teachers' pedagogical skills in many policy documents that are trying to maximise learning outcomes. You know, it seems some ways that politicians and policymakers don't work in schools but appear to know more about pedagogy than teachers. So this is something we really want to correct. What I'd just like to get to very briefly, on the basis of the neuroscience literature, this rapid literature review has produced 6 what we call necessary conditions of learning. They don't depend on cognitive load theory. There is no neurobiological evidence for the idea of load. Attempts to measure it have not succeeded. These conditions build on Stanislas Dehaene, who's a very eminent French neuroscientist. He developed the 4 pillars of learning, and this rapid literature review that we've been associated with wants to look at learning in these 6 dimensions, and these are critical: paying attention and actively engaging with what students are learning, first one. The second one, repeating and rehearsing the object and contents of what they're learning, monitoring their own errors and applying error feedback, seeking, this is critical, seeking and finding meaning and value in learning, enabling positive and addressing negative emotions in learning and assessment, thinking creatively, imaginatively, associatively, and analogically. These we think, and it's really important to understand that these are not 6 linear conditions, but they're intricately interwoven and dynamically connected. And we think this is what's emerging out of the neuroscience evidence, and it's very much a departure from what we call cognitive load theory, which is a very 1980s model of the mind. It's a view of the mind as computational, the mind as an information processor, the mind like a computer. Now, minds and brains are nothing like computers. Computers need a program, brains don't. Brains are self-organizing. And we think from our association, we really need to move very rapidly away from this enthusiasm for cognitive load theory, which the paper we published 12 months ago is a fairly stinging critique of what is a very outdated and likely wrong understanding of how the human brain learns. Matthew, and that's probably enough from me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris. Yes, when we're seeing across Australia with Commonwealth initiatives around, the core content for initial teacher education, and a lot of the stuff that's going around direct instruction, explicit instruction, things like that. I think we can see a little bit of a thread that's happening along here as well, along with you and Andy Myson and Angela, talking around, well, what are the really genuine things that students need to learn? How do they engage with it? And we are repeating a lot of things that have just been very old practice, and unfortunately that seems to get replicated sometimes.
Indeed.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to the president of the Independent Primary School Heads of Australia, Martin. Great to see you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be part of this forum.
Over to you.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to pay my respects to the Wonnarua people who are the traditional custodians of the land where I am today, here in Wollombi, in the Lower Hunter Valley, paying respects to elders past, present and emerging, and we maybe walk together for a more peaceful and reconciled nation built on hope and trust. As Matt said, I'm the National President of the Independent Primary School Heads of Australia. That's a group of about 520 heads of junior school across the country. And we have been an association supporting heads of junior school for about 70 years, just over 70 years throughout Australia. I'm also the head of junior school at Barker College. It's an independent school in the northern suburbs of Sydney. We have 750 children from pre-kindergarten to year 6 as part of our junior school, and that's a co-educational school. And Barker has been a school for about 135 years, so quite some tradition and history there. I'm here on Wonnarua land today because we have 3 Indigenous campuses that I help our school to look after, and the school today is at Narralina Al Barker in the Lower Hunter region, just spending some time with them. And I've been across at our other campus at Yarramalong, where we've got 40 children, all from Indigenous background, and a great program that we run supporting children from Aboriginal families. I'm also part of the Australian Primary Principals Association under Angela's great leadership. And it's great to be part of that team and working with other key primary associations from all sectors across the country, developing policy and also looking to support primary school principals across the nation. And the National Advisory Council does great work. So thanks to Angela for her leadership there. As a primary school principal and educator, one of my primary concerns is the engagement and well-being of the students, so that they can successfully access and participate in their education. We want kids to feel safe and happy before they set about engaging in their learning. In terms of learning, we want an all-round education where we develop the hearts and minds of the young people in our care. We want kids to be active in their learning, building their knowledge, understanding and skill. We want them to bring a positive attitude to learning as well as appropriate resilience and grit so that they can navigate challenges, obstacles as they come into their pathways. And really important too for me as an educator of primary school kids is character and confidence, how we develop those types of skills. And we talk about, particularly in our school and across a number of independent schools, is character, capacity and confidence. They help a child to thrive, not only in their learning, but in their life. Capacity comes from knowing things, being able to work their way through challenges, having the skills and resources to take on whatever is next in their particular journey. If you have capacity, you can develop confidence. You understand what you need to be successful in whatever form that takes. Being first is not the only measure of success. A rank on a league table or a particular score is not a measure of success. We want to see kids growing in their capacity, growing in their understanding of themselves and their learning styles and the things that they know and the things that they want to know. kids moving along a journey like that, that's success. But we also want kids to have character. I feel that this is one of the most important aspects of the education journey for our young people. The person you are, your heart and your ability to positively impact those around you and your community. We want to develop kids who see beyond themselves, who look out for others and seek to make a difference. Providing quality opportunities and experiences to primary age students is critical to a well-balanced education. Developing impactful relationships with students that help them to belong, connect, and learn, will inspire them to engage and develop. We want to see some flexibility and adaptability in our teaching and learning from our teachers, adjusting to the needs of the students in their classes, in their school, and in the community context. Each context may be different, and there needs to be flexibility and adaptability in the types of things that we're doing to meet the needs of those particular students. And how also can we look at the voice of students at a primary age level, the importance of them having some ability to choose pathways in their learning, to make decisions in their learning, to have them involved in the process of learning. One of the ways I see we do this is providing quality literature, appropriate teaching and learning in the use of technology, experiential activities that build that knowledge, understanding and skill, as well as activities that assist in the development and maintenance of healthy relationships. These are important aspects of a quality transformational education. Many schools are working towards the development of this type of education. What we need is governments and educational authorities that can support this. We need to see media representatives supporting valuable aims and objectives that we see as an important part of any primary school education. Our kids are valuable resources. They're the future of our nation and our world, and we want to prepare children who are ready to take on that world, to face challenges, to come up with solutions, and to direct the course of our society. So hopefully we're able to do that, and hopefully being part of a forum like this helps all of us to think more broadly about the types of education we want to deliver. So thanks, Matt, and thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I might even just ask the question. How much do you think that existing systems and structures, even hours of schooling, the compulsory attendance 5 days a week, how do those things, you think, restrict some of the innovation that could take place?
That's a good question. I think again, I think it's a contextual based thing. I think, like, if I think about our remote schools in remote communities, that's the most important thing is getting kids to school. Now, if you have to adjust your day or the way your day operates to make that happen, and for kids to feel safe and happy to come to school, I think you should be able to be flexible about that. You set your goals, you set your objectives for the learning of each child and the school context. I think schools should have some flexibility in how they set up their structures around that. I think it's a bit more challenging in metropolitan schools to do that, and around big system type schools. As an independent school, I think we have a little bit more flexibility, perhaps, maybe around departments and department schools, it might be more challenging.
Matt, can I comment?
Yeah,
please.
Can I comment there as well? One of the things Chris said, and Chris, thank you, I love that. We've been talking in APA about this kind of top-down version that, we want to talk about evidence-based practice, but we need to equally value practice-based evidence, and that is what it takes at the local level to have the learning happening. And one of the challenges is when we try to make things scale, I always say scalable is not sameable. I want to scale positive, engaged children who are loving maths, but how I do that will rely on, the cohort of students, but also we putting forward teachers' professional knowledge. It is much more valued in other professions such as health, that I, as the professional, know how to get to achieve something within the relationship with my patient or client. And Chris, your comment about emotion and feeling, I reflect on Mary Imadina Yang, the neuroscientist, who says first we feel and then we learn. And teaching is a highly relational practice, which relies, again, that person in the classroom to know what's best for the child. And the beauty of my job, and I visited schools like Martin's, is I see that incredible relational work in practice, but it's less understood by someone who's not an educational professional. They don't see all the nuance in the work.
No, thanks for that, Angela. I'll send out some messages because we're supposed to be having three other people online, and who haven't arrived as yet. So I'll send out some messages, and hopefully they can be able to join us.
Otherwise, is it karaoke time?
It could be. We can carry on. I don't know if Gabrielle, if karaoke is your thing.
Not really. You don't want to hear me sing for sure. No.
Okay, well, I'll step in.
But I can always have an AI sing for me. No worries. With my voice.
That's true. I'm going to do my piece, and I know that we've got Meg Brighton, our Commonwealth Deputy Secretary, lining up and ready to go. So for my piece, I've got sort of, painting the context of special education within Australia and elsewhere. And one of those real challenges is just the concept of what inclusion is. And I recently wrote an article in the International Confederation of Principals magazine called The Inclusion Illusion. And it's essentially really trying to challenge what inclusion means, because it means different things to different people and for different reasons. And we had our Disability Royal Commission in Australia, and the stories that came out from that were, horrific around the lived experience of people with disability before, during, and after school, and what that looks like, and the recommendations that they were going to make and that they did make. There were 6 commissioners, and around 3 commissioners were very much on looking at the full inclusion model around the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of the Child. And they saw that special education and special schools or support classes were exclusionary. They were viewed as segregated. And so 3 of the commissioners wanted all special schools and support classes closed, phased out, and to cease, and for every student to be able to receive their education within their local school. And the reality is that, about 98% of students with disability are already in mainstream schools. And the schools that I support and advocate for are the ones who take the students who've got the most profound disabilities and the most complex needs that you can imagine. And inclusion just isn't a place. It's the programs that you actually use. It's what does the child need? You don't start with an ideology and come down and say, well, look, everyone's going to get their needs met in one place and it's one size fits all. And it just doesn't happen. When you look at health, for an example, if you go to your general practitioner and what you need is beyond their expertise, you will be referred to a specialist. And so we have that specialisation. We also have gifted and talented programs. We have extension programs. We've got selective high schools. We've got faith-based schools, all sorts of things that allow choice. And 3 of the Royal Commissioners were really looking at taking away that choice so that every other regular student would be able to choose the school that they like, whether that is an independent school, a Catholic school, it doesn't matter. But the inference was that if you are a parent of a child with a disability, you don't have a choice, that it will just be a mainstream school because that's apparently the only place that inclusion can happen. And I argue that that's very much a myth, and that our parents for our students in our special schools are the ones who advocate for us. They're the ones who really appreciate the work we do and they want to be part of our communities. No one's forcing them to enrol. And that's a really big mindset thing that, you know, why would you take away that choice that every other student can have? But if you've got a disability, it'd be one size fits all. And as we know, one of the biggest challenges is the rates of increase in students with a disability in our schools is increasing, and especially autism. And within our mainstream schools, our special schools struggle to get staff. There are really good special educators and qualified in special ed. But that's a challenge for all of my colleagues here as well, is to get the staff for support classes or special classes. And to have that skill set, it's just not there. And a lot of the universities just aren't preparing enough people with special education qualifications to support our students with the most needs. And universities do cover inclusive practice, but it's very much a 101 kind of touch on disability. It really is a broad brush that gives teachers, initial teachers, a bit of an experience across what disability looks like, some basic ways to work with students with special needs, but there's nothing that goes in depth. And there used to be a lot of university courses that were the full 4-year degrees within special education. And that was the kind of in-depth experience that people needed. And we're also looking at, okay, well, to support kids better, we need to have teachers who've got that experience. So how can we get teachers to have more experience within special ed, but also to see it as a really valid career path, and to be able to say, look, this is really meaningful work. And, you know, I've spent my career in special ed, and the changes you see are really small and slow, but they're profound. And the impact that you can have between a school and a family to be able to support them with accessing other services, to be able to get all that wraparound support, it really is a multidisciplinary team that works within our special schools. And when you're looking at all of that together, you're going, well, why would you want to get rid of that specialisation when there's clearly a need? So that's the challenge. 3 of the other commissioners were very much in support of that full suite of agency for students, so that if you have a music talent, that you can do a musical extension program. If you're gifted and talented, you've got programs for that. And also for students of English and second language, being able to have that intensive English language support. And that's a specialisation, but those kind of things are never viewed as segregation. And there's a narrative that always says that special schools are segregated. And then they use a word that I really hate when it comes to our special schools. They go back to the old 70s language, 1970s language of it's an institution. And we're not institutions, we are schools. We deliver the Australian curriculum and we support the most complex needs. And that's what it's about. So it's a real challenge in a lot of these spaces. I did one quick thing for this presentation that was looking at the survey that you sent out, Gabrielle, as part of all of this, which were the survey results. And I'll just quickly go through those. 1, education must be more human. And I think we've heard that through all of our speakers here today. And that's around the emotional intelligence, connection and trust. And for our students, that co-regulation, and that's mental health. So it's deep family partnerships and the respect for dignity and identity. And all of those things are what we do in special schools instinctively. It's leading through empathy, it's personal relationships and care. And that's what most schools are trying to do for all of their students. 2, learning that matters in real life. And the special schools strengths there are really around functional life skills learning. That's a huge part of our programs. It's community-based learning, so that they're actually learning within their environment that they're going to live, real-world problem solving, work readiness through authentic experiences, and then all of that cross-agency collaboration between health, National Disability Insurance Scheme, therapy, community. And then the thought that teaching must be reinvented, not just updated. And within special schools, our work is highly differentiated. It's personalised, it's inquiry-centred learning, and it's strength-based. Again, the interdisciplinary teams, and we've been innovators in that space because we realise that one size doesn't fit all. Everything we do starts with what does that child need? And again, that reinforces personalised learning paths. Our individual learning plans for every student. We've got individual behaviour and management plans. We've got independent living plans. We've got health. It can go right through the full gamut. And every one of those is tailored to every individual student's needs. Teachers and leaders need real support. And that's within our space. It's highest complexity care, safety, disability and interagency work. We face a lot of stress. And there's a lot of burnout from our work. So that's something that needs to be thought about. And then families and schools communities working together. That is our bread and butter. We usually have daily communication with all of our parents. And that gives a real opportunity of people to work together and to be able to discuss things together. And one of the challenges is when the skill set you're expecting of a special educator are huge, because as a teacher, you're not usually having daily communication with a parent. And it's a really deep communication around what worked today, what hasn't, what are the challenges. And a lot of the time, our teachers and our teachers' aides, because they make up more than 50% of our staff, they haven't been trained to work with adults. They've been trained to teach. And so that's one of the challenges as well. We need to have courses that are actually really focused on interdisciplinary work. So it's with those therapists, it's with allied health. So there we go. That's me, because I'm conscious of the time, and I've just got a message from Pat Murphy that he's going to be jumping in a sec, hopefully right now, and that'd be great.
And Matt, can I ask a question of you, just in regards to that sort of specialised high needs and the work that's done in the special needs schools? Are you finding that there's trends are increasing in diagnosis and levels of need and the demand for the specialised programs? I mean, we're noticing it in mainstream schools that kids are being diagnosed more regularly. The needs levels, the ASD, the spectrum kids, they're coming through, and we're needing to manage those. So you're finding that similarly in the special needs schools?
Look, it's really interesting because over the span that I've been in special ed, I've certainly seen the change. We used to have a much wider spread of abilities within our special schools, but we're finding it's just more and more pointy end. We're just getting the most complex kids now is the 100% of the cohort. And New South Wales, for example, I think, and the government sector has established additional 230 support classes, and that's to cater for that growth. But again, it's that workforce. How do we get good special educators in there? And a lot of our mainstream colleagues reach out to our special schools to say, hey, look, can you come and have a look at this student? Can you give us some ideas of how to work with them? But yeah, it's definitely on the up. And departments are struggling to meet the need. And it's very much like the national discussion around the NDIS and thriving kids. You're looking at, who qualifies? And it's that, if you build a 20-lane freeway, you fill it, and then you build another 20 lanes and you'll fill it. So it's a real challenge for all to how to get that sort of mix right, and who gets the support that they need.
I'm finding a lot of teachers, good teachers, classroom teachers, are going back and studying the Masters in Special Ed, or they're trying to upskill so that they can go into that sort of learning support, behaviour management type area. Are you seeing similar? That's the sort of people who are coming to you?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of really good programs in here. Newcastle's got some a snowball special ed sort of program that's happening, which is great. And yeah, so there's some green shoots of really good stuff, but because it's just a huge need, as you know.
No, thank you.
And I think I've just got a message from Pat. He aims to be here soon. Well, he's running out of time. Okay, so what I might do is go to our next speaker, who's going to be bumped up the list, and that's our Deputy Secretary from Commonwealth Education Department, Meg Brighton, and I can see you there, Meg. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Matt, and it is a pleasure to be here. Yuma, everyone. Hello and greetings in the language of the Ngunnawal people. I, like Chris Duncan, I'm based in Canberra, Australia's capital, and I want to pay my respects to First Nations elders, not only here on Ngunnawal country, but also to First Nations elders across Australia and across the globe. As Matt said, my name is Meg Brighton. I am from the Australian Government, Department of Education, and my role is about national direction and national policy in school education. I'm not a teacher, but I grew up in a home of teachers. My mother was a special ed teacher and a special education principal. So I had the privilege of spending a lot of time with her in my early years. And my father was a music teacher, so I come with a different perspective, not only as a child of teachers, but having also worked in education policy for a long time. So it's really great to be here with you all, and thanks for the opportunity. You know, we're at a really pivotal point across the globe. Societies are absolutely evolving, but with that evolution, necessarily our knowledge, our skills and our capabilities also need to evolve so that we can fully participate in both society and the economy. Our education systems are at the absolute heart of this, and we need to be responsive to not only the needs of our children and young people, but actually, and often more importantly, to the needs of our workforce, the teachers, the support staff in schools, and importantly, the school leaders. So when we think here at the Federal Department of Education, when we're thinking about the future of education, we have a number of questions that are really top of mind for us. One of them is, how do we ensure that education systems are ready for the future, not just today, but also for the challenges and opportunities ahead? How do we ensure that teachers and school leaders are core to policy development? Angela, Andy and Chris all spoke about the role of educators in policy making. And what we've been doing here in the Australian Government, we have been trying to embed teacher voice in our education policy making. We've been refining our structures, our methodologies to sustain engagement where teachers and importantly, teacher representatives form a really active and central part to the dialogue. So that's one of the key questions that we've got top of mind for us. Another key question for us, how do we prepare every learner to thrive in a rapidly changing world, socially, economically and technology? I mean, when we think about the AIs, if I use the language that was used earlier, that's really the fourth wave of transformation that we're in today. And how do we protect and enhance the mastery of teaching and also use AIs as a mechanism to relieve some of the work that really teachers don't need to be doing? And I think that with what both Angela and Chris spoke to about the importance when we think about enabling children and young people to thrive in their learning in this changing world, the absolute importance of early learning and of primary schools in that, not just for foundational knowledge, but more importantly, actually for the foundational skills about how you engage with each other, how you learn to empathise, how you learn to connect, how you learn to tackle tricky conversations, even as a 5-year-old in the playground. Those skills are essential to us being able to be good humans and engaging with the world. The next question that's always on our mind is, how do we attract, support and retain great teachers so that they can continue to grow, inspire and lead the change? I was recently at the World Summit on Teachers, and where we discussed the teacher-student relationship as a common heritage of humanity, a cultural heritage under UNESCO's heritage structures and methodologies. And how do we recognise this common heritage of humanity in the student-teacher relationship in the context of increasing digital transformation? And really importantly, how that digitisation can't and should not undermine the essential role of human interaction and socialisation in education? And these are the sorts of questions that have been driving our work here in the Australian Government. Australia is a federation. Education is a shared responsibility between the federal government and the states and territories and our very large non-government schooling sector. Our non-government sector educates around about 1/3 of Australia's children and young people, with the government sector educating the other 2/3. And collaboration and engagement with our stakeholders, including the principal associations, which you've been hearing from today, is absolutely critical for our policy making to be impactful, on point, and relevant to today's needs. So we have been, over the last 2 years, focusing on building a structure to deliver a better and fairer education system in Australia. And that focus is on early childhood, schooling, and universities. So our focus is on integrating an end-to-end approach that ensures children and young people and other learners have access to quality and equitable learning opportunities. So we've done a lot in the early childhood space, and that's everything from making sure that the workforce have a wage appropriate to the important role they have, through to safety reforms and mechanisms to make early learning more accessible for families. In higher education and universities, we've been doing a lot of work around making sure that there's a fairer student loan system, and that when university students are doing their practical placements, like teachers, like nurses, like social workers, that they get paid during their practical placements. But at the heart of our education system is schools, and it's the absolute core to our society. And this year we have been working on a 10-year plan to deliver equity and excellence for every student in the country. That plan is anchored in reforms and has funding to ensure we can implement those reforms. And Matt, in my couple of minutes left, I'm just going to touch on those reforms. They are 3 reforms. One is about equity and excellence. That's about students receiving high quality, equitable, evidence-based teaching tailored to their needs. So you've heard from Martin, you've heard from Matt about the importance of tailoring it to the student needs, but importantly, making sure the students who need additional support to reach their potential get that support. And Angela raised a really important point: evidence-based practice and practice-based evidence. The challenge for schooling systems is how do they implement school improvement and reform at scale, but reform that honours local context, but in a way that balances coherence across and between schools. And that's one of the challenges that every schooling system in the world faces. The next tier of reform is really around a strong and sustainable workforce, making sure that our teachers and school staff are valued, respected, and supported, and that their expertise is honoured and utilised. So part of that work has been about making sure that universities are better preparing teaching students for the best start in their career. And that's everything from the knowledge and skills essential, but actually it's also about the attributes so that they continue to be lifelong learners themselves as society and community is changing, as there is new research developing, like what Chris was talking about in terms of cognitive load theory. And our third reform is, and Martin's spoken about this already, is all around wellbeing for learning, providing students with a structured approach around wellbeing which increases their sense of safety and connection to school, or as Martin framed it, cultivating a sense of character, competence, resilience, building their belonging and connecting to learning. And part of that work is about making sure, and these reforms are anchored in making sure that students get access to the appropriate support, experiences, teaching and resources essential for them to access their learning. And Matt, as he was talking about the differentiation in the specialist schooling sector, he's highlighted those points. It's about making sure that every student gets the access to those supports that they need to thrive. And this recognises that communities are diverse. And on that point about wellbeing, some of you may have heard in December, Australia is implementing a world first social media age restriction, which means that from the 10th of November, Australia's under 16-year-olds will not be able to have a social media account on a social media platform. We think that work, combined with the mobile phone bans that are already in place across many schools in the country, will mean that our students will be in a much better position not only to engage with their learning but participate in the world. Matt, I'll leave it at that. I know you want to go to Pat in a few minutes, but great to be here. And we're really proud of our progress in Australia. But as you've heard from my colleagues from the principal associations, we've still got more work to do.
Yeah, thanks so much, Meg. That's a really comprehensive rundown and really appreciated. Unfortunately, Pat Murphy hasn't been able to join us. I've had a missed phone call, but I couldn't take it. But I think we're pretty much at time, Gabrielle, unless you've got
we
any
are.
questions
Thank you very
for
much.
us.
No, thank you very much. We're on time now, and we have our friends from Independent Schools Queensland who have just joined in and might want to say hi across Australia.
G'day. Welcome.
Hi. Can you hear us well, Gabrielle?
We can. Yeah, we're all ready.
Wonderful.
So thanks, everybody for this previous segment. It was very, very enlightening. We are going to be uploading it within the next few minutes on the YouTube channel. So if you want to share that with your respective association, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. All the best.
Thanks so much. Thanks, colleagues.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.